Today, we are diving deep into one of the most amazing and, frankly, most problematic pieces of engineering in the entire human body, the shoulder. It's this incredible joint that gives us a massive range of motion, but as you'll see, that freedom comes at a pretty steep price.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the basic design of the joint. Then we'll see what all that clever design lets us do. After that, we'll get into its big weakness, and then meet the structures that actually solve that weakness. And finally, we're going to zoom out and see how the shoulder fits into the bigger picture.
Okay, let's start at square one. What exactly is the shoulder joint? Well, it really all boils down to two key parts, and the relationship between them defines everything, both its greatest strength and, as we're about to find out, its biggest problem.
So, at its very heart, the shoulder is a ball and socket joint. The best way to picture this, think of a golf ball sitting on a golf tee. That simple image right there, that's the secret to its incredible, almost 360-degree range of motion.
And this is where you can see the fundamental problem, the main conflict of the shoulder, laid bare. You've got this huge, round ball, that's the top of your upper arm bone, and it's trying to balance on this tiny, incredibly shallow socket. It is an intentionally unstable setup.
So what's the payoff for this wobbly design? What incredible abilities does this unique structure actually give us? Well, this is where the shoulder really gets to show off.
This design unlocks a range of motion that no other joint in the body can even come close to. And that's not just a cool party trick, it's a massive part of what makes us human. It's the evolutionary edge that let our ancestors throw things with incredible power and accuracy, to climb and to build the entire world we see around us.
And of course, none of this just happens. As you can see here, every single movement, lifting your arm forward, pulling it back, turning it in or out, it's all a beautifully coordinated dance between a whole host of different muscles. It's a really complex and powerful system working in harmony.
So here's the bottom line. All of that amazing mobility we just talked about, it comes at a cost. The shoulder makes a deliberate trade. It sacrifices stability to gain that incredible freedom of movement. It's an evolutionary gamble that, for us, clearly paid off.
And this brings us to the one question that pretty much anyone who's ever had a sore shoulder has asked. Why is this thing so weak? Why is it so easy to injure? Well, the answer takes us right back to that initial design.
It really all comes down to this. The socket is just way too small and shallow for the big, round ball. Unlike your hip joint where the ball is nestled deep inside a protective bony socket, the shoulder has almost no bony support to speak of. It is almost completely dependent on soft tissues, muscles, and ligaments to hold it all together.
Right, and this instability isn't just random. It follows a very specific pattern. If you've ever known someone who's dislocated their shoulder, I'd bet it popped out in one very specific direction. So why is that? The answer is actually pretty simple. The main group of muscles responsible for supporting the joint, well, they have a huge blind spot. They completely forgot to cover the bottom.
Okay, so let's meet this support crew. How in the world does the body solve this engineering problem of keeping a giant ball centered on a tiny little dish? Well, it's a job for a very famous group of muscles.
The #1 hero in this story is the rotator cuff. Now, it's not actually one thing. It's a team of 4 muscle tendons that wrap around the ball like a cuff, and their main job is to actively pull that ball and pin it into the socket, keeping it stable as you move.
And here's the team. You've got muscles covering the top, the back, and the front. But notice what's missing. The bottom. What we call the inferior aspect has zero rotator cuff protection. And that is exactly why the shoulder almost always dislocates downwards.
This also tells you exactly where the system is under the most stress. That muscle right on top, the supraspinatus, is constantly fighting to keep the ball from riding up too high. It does a ton of work, and because of that, it's the one that gets injured the most often.
But of course, the rotator cuff doesn't do it all alone. There's a whole backup team. You've got a little ring of cartilage called the labrum that acts like a suction cup to make the socket a bit deeper. You've got tough ligaments acting like ropes, and even a bony roof that stops the ball from moving too far up. It really is a team effort.
All right, let's zoom out now, because the shoulder joint doesn't operate in a vacuum. It's part of a much bigger system. And understanding this system is going to reveal a really fascinating and, frankly, kind of weird connection to some of our internal organs.
See, the whole thing is part of what's called the shoulder girdle. This is basically your shoulder blade and your collarbone. And their job is to create a platform that hangs your entire arm off the main part of your skeleton. The joint itself is just one piece of this whole elegant contraption.
And then the movements of this girdle are things you do every single day. When you shrug your shoulders, that's elevation. When you reach forward for something or make a punching motion, that's protraction. You actually can't even lift your arm all the way over your head without the whole girdle rotating along with it.
Okay, but this is where things get truly wild. What if I told you that a sharp pain in your shoulder could actually be a warning sign of a life-threatening problem with an organ deep inside your abdomen, like your spleen? I mean, how is that even possible?
The answer is this bizarre phenomenon called referred pain. So let's say a problem in your belly, like a ruptured spleen, starts to irritate your diaphragm. The nerve that supplies your diaphragm sends out a pain signal. But here's the crazy part. The nerve that feels things in your shoulder tip shares the exact same wiring at the spinal cord. So your brain gets confused, it gets its wires crossed, and it thinks the pain is coming from your shoulder.
So, at the end of the day, the story of the shoulder is a story of a brilliant trade-off. It gives up rock-solid stability in exchange for a range of motion that literally helped shape human evolution. It's a classic high-risk, high-reward design. Which kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. Where else in the human body can you see a similar kind of compromise being made?